Okay, so now I'm just going to talk a little bit about the Lotus process for healing chronic illness, just briefly, and you will have chance for a bit of any questions you've got about that in a moment, and also the opportunity to join me for 9 months with a circle of women who are going through the same program together, and then after that there will also be time for a little meditation as well. So it'd be great to have you here for the whole rest of our call. We will finish in just under half an hour. So as I mentioned, my book on healing chronic illness is this one. You Can Heal Chronic Illness, The Lotus Process, 8 Steps to Health and Happiness. And that was inspired by my own journey to health many years ago, but also working with many different people from around the world for the last 10 years, supporting other people on their journey to health as well, and the kind of steps that are often required to get from a place of being unwell to a place of being healthy again. And I think even though my journey was chronic fatigue, it's also very relevant to whatever the condition is, whether it's an autoimmune condition or some other kind of chronic health condition. So the first step is about the power of acceptance and surrender, that we can't overcome something unless we find that place of acceptance of how it is in the moment, and almost even a place of surrender to what is. And actually as well, that taps into sort of, with EFT, we always start something with, even though I have this issue, I accept myself, or I'm okay anyway. And there's something about being able to accept what is in the here and now, whatever we're working with, then it actually sets up the conditions for change to be possible. So acceptance is very powerful. It helps us to accept when we perhaps can buy into the idea that often illness comes into our lives for a reason, and it can be like a teacher or a wake-up call to living in a different way. And it doesn't mean we've done anything wrong because of the way we've been living or anything like that. I mean, we've always been doing our best, and a lot of us have kind of inherited certain like family patterns or cultural ways of being that aren't sustainable. And an illness can be a wake-up call to a new way of living. So that can help us with that process of learning to accept what is and being able to surrender to what is almost. And if you have any kind of spiritual beliefs, then that can be helpful, because that can help us surrender and have a sense of being able to surrender to something bigger than ourselves that can actually almost support us and help us on our healing journey. And also, the more we can accept and surrender to what is, the more we relax the nervous system. And in order to heal, we need to have as calm and a relaxed nervous system as possible. But many of us who develop chronic illness have been in a state of fight or flight, or have experienced trauma, and our nervous system has gone into the freeze response. So soothing and calming the nervous system is part of the process of healing, and being able to accept where we are will also help, because if we get unwell and then we get very stressed about being unwell and find it very difficult, which of course is completely natural, but those kind of responses or fears about it and reactions to it can also perpetuate the stress. So the more we can accept and surrender, the quicker we will heal. So there are ways that we can support that process, like things like meditation, like things like doing EFT on our reactivity to the illness, the way we're responding to it, the ways that we can perpetuate the stress. So yeah, acceptance and surrender is powerful. But it's not just about that, because if we just accept it, then probably not much will change. So the second step of the Lotus process is about belief and commitment. That it's not only about accepting, it's also about believing that something else is possible, believing that we can heal, and believing that we have the power to do it. And there is a process that's going to help us get there. There are steps that we can follow that are going to help. And also committing to that process, committing to what is required to heal, committing to the self-care that we'll come on to in a moment, and committing to coming back to a place of belief. And of course we're going to lose it at times, if we get a lot better or feel like we're getting a bit better and then have symptoms again, then we can lose that faith. but it's about having ways to be able to come back to it. So again, there are things we can do to help with that process. We can do tapping on our doubts about whether we can heal. Maybe if we've been told by a doctor or someone we respect that we're never going to get better, we can tap out those kind of beliefs. If we believe that because we're older then it's going to be much harder or we're never going to heal, we can tap out those beliefs. We can read recovery stories from people who maybe are of the older generation that have still managed to heal. So there are ways that we can inspire ourselves and help us to get back onto that sense of we can heal and that belief in the commitment. And the third step is about self-care and inner resources. So that's about the importance and the value of self-care and all the different ways that we can take care of ourselves in terms of the things like meditation practice, yoga, sort of gentle movement, whatever we can manage, and building that up. If we can, getting outside, being in nature, following our joy, developing self-compassion, helping ourselves from the inside out with eating a really good diet and a diet that helps to calm the system from the inside out. So often there's a lot of inflammation with chronic illness. Any ways that we can calm that inflammation through good diet, things like eating lots of vegetables, cooked vegetables, and things like turmeric, and different ways that we can calm that, not having caffeine, different ways. So just thinking about our self-care on many levels. The next step is about community and support, that we heal, I would say, faster and it's more joyful if we have a sense of community around us. And that was one of the inspirations behind developing the Women's Wellness Circle, that Sophie and I both felt that female friendships and women's circles had helped our own healing journeys and helped our lives just generally to be sustainable, and so that was what really inspired it. And that actually, if we could gather women together, that they can heal faster. Women can heal faster when they're together, when there's a sense of support and community. But it's also about considering, of course, how else can you develop more support and community in your local community, online. That it's okay to need support to get better. It's okay to need therapists or coaches or body workers or different people to help us along the way. And then the fifth step is about overcoming any blocks to healing. So when we're looking at blocks to healing, that is things like personality traits that can hold us back, things like being an overachiever or an overhelper or perfectionist or a peacemaker, ways that aspects of our personality can create more stress for our systems and perpetuate illness, and how we can start to change those basic structures somewhat, so that we often don't fundamentally change our personality, but we have it in a way that it's more manageable and it's not going to create symptoms. So for example, I was, if you've read my book, you'll know that I was a peacemaker, and I had this way of being that it was like, keep the peace at all costs, don't ever have conflict, don't ever show negative emotions, but to the cost of my health. And to get well, I needed to learn to be able to feel negative emotions more, to find ways to communicate them to those around me when needed, to find ways to handle potential conflict without getting ill. But I might still be that person, I'm still someone who really wants peace around me and wants to keep peace in my relationships, but I've got it in a way that it's not making me ill anymore. Or occasionally if I have a blip, it's a little sign that I'm not attending to something. So, but that might not be the same for you. Some of you will relate to that, and some of you will have your own sort of unique way of being. And actually, one of the systems that I mentioned in the book is the Enneagram system, which I found quite helpful to understand myself more fully. And when you have more awareness of your patterns, then you can also have the possibility of starting to change them and starting to grow within them. And then the sixth step is about purpose and authenticity, that to get well, often we have to have a sense of where we're going, a sense of a bigger purpose to be well. And it doesn't have to be a big purpose. It could be something quite small, but all very deeply meaningful, like being able to spend more time with your children or with your friends, or maybe you want to work for a charity that you believe in. It could be a little bit of voluntary work. It doesn't matter, but having some kind of sense of purpose that's bigger than yourself can often help to inspire your path to wellness. for instance, with me, it was I want to help other people get well. If I can get well and help others get well, then it'd be worthwhile to have gone through this journey. And that helped me provide meaning to keep going, even when it felt really hard at times. And in this step, I also talk about the power of authenticity and showing up authentically in all areas of your life, with your purpose, with how you express your feelings, with who you are in the world and how you express yourself. And then the next step is about healing your past. That often we go through life and we think maybe we aren't carrying any burdens from the past, but if you do a little bit of deeper exploration, you'll find that your body is still carrying maybe some traumas from past personal life experiences. So there's ways that we can address that with EFT and with other tools, like working with the inner child, and family constellations work from things that you're carrying maybe from your family system. So in this step, we cover these kind of aspects of healing that not everyone has to do to get well, but I would say that some people do have to do that work to get well, and that it will also support you in the rest of your life as well to come, and having more wholeness and health and happiness and growing. And I put that towards the end because I think it's really good to have built up enough resources to really do that work, because that work can also be quite tiring and can be quite overwhelming at times, and to just also make sure you've got the support and containment around that kind of work, whether that's one-to-one or in a small women's circle, which I'll talk more about in a moment. And then finally, it's about sustaining your health and wholeness, and your keeping up your self-care, keeping up a life that supports you in sustaining your health. Because many people have the experience of having a chronic illness and then maybe getting better, and then having the symptoms come back. And how do we support a life that really supports you in sustaining that health and building on it and keeping up the kind of growth that the illness has called you into? So over the next 9 months, I have a women's circle that will be happening, where we will always be starting the calls with, similar to how we did today, with some self-care, some self-massage and some meditation and a little check-in. It will be a smaller group though, so you can go a little bit more intimate in that. And then there'll be a bit of teaching on one of the themes I just spoke about. Each month we'll go through a different step in depth. And then after that, there will be some time for some one-to-one coaching work with the women in the group. Not everyone each time, but what women find from being in these circles is that often they get benefit from being present for someone else doing some coaching work. And we might be using EFT, we might be using a pause, which is mentioned in the book, or different tools to help work with whatever's going on. And even if you're not personally being worked with, as I mentioned, you often get benefits, and actually some women find it more powerful to do work in a group, because of the holding container of the group, because of the understanding and connections that happen in the group, and what it can reveal, what it can kind of wake up awarenesses that maybe wouldn't have come out if it wasn't for being in the group context. So that will be running over 9 months, and there will be fortnightly calls like that. And then there will also be a monthly self-care retreat with Sophie, which is Women's Temple, embodiment practices and sharing practices, listening practices, that kind of thing. And also there'll be some interviews with some experts in the field of health and women's wellness particularly. So people like a naturopathic doctor, a Chinese medical doctor. There's also Bethany Webster, who writes a lot about the power of healing the mother wound for our empowerment as women. Fiona Agombe, the yoga teacher for ME, chronic fatigue in the UK, and also Alexandra Pope and Shani, one of those, or both of them, who runs something called the Red School in the UK, about the power of following the menstrual cycle or the menopause consciously for healing. So there'll be some of the experts. There might be some other bonus ones that will be included later, but that'll be like a chance to have some intimate Q&A time with some of these amazing women. And there'll be other bonuses as well included in the program, like access to all the Women's Wellness Council interviews from earlier in the year, and an EFT for healing chronic illness course, a Lotus Process video program, so lots of things. Anyway, so I'll give you an opportunity to sign up for a free call with me this week. I'm away on a training course next week, studying more on family constellations for illness. But I'm here this week, and I've got a few slots later in this week, and then we start on the 30th of October. So there is a few opportunities to have half-hour chat with me further about where you're at and whether this might be a good fit for you at this time or not, and to see if you'd be a good fit for the group as well, the women that are already gathering, and some of them are here today actually. So I think that's enough from me. I'll just see if any of you have got any questions.